Hello viewers, you are watching our weekly program Invest in Ethiopia on OBN Horn of Africa. Today we'll be discussing the role of Green Legacy Initiative in economic growth of the nation. To discuss this issue, I joined by Dr. Gemedo Dalle, Associate Professor of Center for Environmental Science and Biodiversity Management and Vegetation Ecology at Addis Ababa University. Till the end of our program, stay tuned. Doctor, thank you for your time and joining us.
And thank you very much, sir.
First, would you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Thank you very much for having me on this program. I'm Gemedo Dalle, currently working in the capacity of Associate Professor for Biodiversity and Vegetation Ecology at the Center for Environmental Science at Addis Ababa University, and former Environment Minister and also former Director General for the Ethiopian Biodiversity Institute. At the global level, again, country director or country representative for the Global Green Growth Institute, and Africa regional lead for forestry and the nature-based solution based in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. Those are my experiences.
Thank you. Today we'll be discussing about natural resource conservation and environmental protection and the role of Green Legacy initiative that Ethiopia is undertaking in this regard. So why the issue of conservation and environmental protection is becoming the concern of global community these days?
This is a very important question, which is also timely. The thing is, we are facing global crisis due to climate change, and the global crisis due to loss of natural resources, specifically biodiversity crisis. The root cause for all these problems emanate from population growth. The population growth in Ethiopia and in Africa and other developing countries is like explosive. This population growth, in the absence of technology, human capacity, is becoming a practical challenge for natural resources, because when population growth increases, and due to population growth, there is deforestation, unsustainable use of land, expansion of agricultural plots into protected areas, wetlands, and affecting the water bodies, and overexploitation, overfishing, and also very unsustainable use of agrochemicals, which also affect natural resource base. So because of this and because of the climate change, which is again adding another burden on this, there is high need for promoting conservation and increasing this, the technologies, the capacities, the regulation that would support sustainable use of natural resources. But there, when we say conservation, it involves safeguarding the natural world, the natural resource base, and it involves also promoting the sustainable management of existing natural resources, existing forests, and also reversing the unsustainable farming, reversing deforestation, if possible, halting deforestation, restoration of degraded ecosystems, and also restoration of lost species, and promoting the motto of living in harmony with nature, where we manage our natural resources for our development. And these are not mutually exclusive, because when we manage our natural resources in a sustainable way, that would be the basis for sustainable development, because any government, any developing nation in the developed country cannot sustain its development without giving due attention to its natural resource base. Environmental protection is fundamental, is a basic prerequisite for the overall development of any country. And biodiversity, as you know, is fundamental for any development. If you take Ethiopia, all export commodities that Ethiopia has been exporting for decades are natural resources, are biodiversity, including the coffee, the oil crops, the live animals, and you can count them. So because of that very fundamental reason that we cannot develop and sustain our development without giving due attention to conservation of natural resources and protection of environment, there is high need to strengthen that collaboration, that effort that promotes and sustains the conservation and the protection of natural resource base.
What is the role of forest governance and why it is needed?
The issue of forest governance needs to be very clear, because I could be wrong, but my understanding is we are not sure on what is meant by forest governance. Forest governance is the way in which different stakeholders, government partners, civil societies, NGOs, local communities, and other development partners negotiate, make and enforce decisions about the management, use, and conservation of forest resources. That means it is about planning about forest, starting from how we can use, how we can sustain that utilization, and also manage the existing of forests. This forest governance includes about rules, regulations about the forest resources, the composition, what part and what type can be used, how it can be governed, how it can be regulated, and who shall benefit in what sense and for what forest product. And those are issues that needs to be very carefully discussed, negotiated, and implemented. But it is unfortunate that most of our forests do not have forest governance, including many of the protected areas, and there is no systemic way of addressing those challenges. And if we have to sustain the conservation, the sustainable use of our natural resources, putting in place effective governance system for forests is very important to promote the use as well as the conservation of the forest resources.
Oromia in particular and Ethiopia in general is striving to afforest and restore forest. So how do you see the effort of afforestation and the forest restoration in Oromia in particular and in Ethiopia in general?
We have to be honest and very clear about what we are doing, particularly in terms of restoring degraded forest landscapes. There are positive achievements in terms of the tree planting campaign and the Green Legacy initiative led by our Prime Minister. This is a model. This is something we all shall be proud of. Having said that, did we really evaluate how we have been operating, how we have been planning and planting tree seedlings for the last 4 years? I appreciate and also I give due recognition and appreciation for the efforts, because starting from the Prime Minister, the regional national president, zonal administrations, and all relevant stakeholders, particularly from government side, are actively engaging in this initiative. That is excellent. That is really a model for other developing countries and even for the developed countries. But the way we have been doing needs to be revisited. In one, are we identifying the right species from the very beginning, not on planting day, from the very beginning, from seedling start, from the nursery side to the planting season? Did we identify which species is needed for what purpose? Do we know which species is relevant and should be planted in what agroecology? In Wenadaga, Daga, or Kola, as we classify our agroecologies. And for what purpose? I would say, although the overall effect is highly appreciable, the way we have been doing needs revisiting. The way we have been doing should be led by experts, and also we have to have, particularly at federal and also at Oromia level, we have to have a functional system that would sustain the Green Legacy Initiative as per the efforts being done. The overall purpose of planting should be to improve our forest landscape, to increase ecosystem services, to improve the livelihood of our communities. In doing so, again, we have to also give due attention to existing forests and sustainably manage those. That is how I assess our efforts.
How do you see the rate of the culture of natural resource conservation in Ethiopia in particular and in Africa in general?
The culture, thanks to the continued effort of Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed, now everybody is now talking about the need to plant tree seedlings, the need to conserve natural resources. That one is now, the awareness has been raised. The understanding is now there. Previously, during my government responsibility, the struggle is to convince people, particularly in leadership position in some local communities, to plant tree seedlings as well as to manage forests, because there were times when leaders say we have to give priority to feeding our people. That's fine. There is no issue on that. We have to feed our people, but we have to feed them in a sustainable way. So to be very effective and also achieve what we want to achieve, the current awareness that has been raised should be used to work more and to build sustainable system at different levels. I would say traditionally, including the Gada system, we have very good culture of caring for trees, caring for natural resources, even having shade trees in households and around. That has been our culture. That culture has been eroded because of the wrong practices in agricultural farming. Now we have to identify our land plots, which one or which percent of whatever we have should be used for farming, and which one should be left for greenery, like for tree shade, for fruit trees, and so on. So we need to do more and to have that kind of integrated agricultural practices where we have trees on farm. Agroforestry practices need to be promoted. Still, I see most of our farm plots are bare. You see trees rarely. That needs to be reversed, and agroforestry trees that have multiple purposes should be planted on at local level, at individual farm level. And also we have to have a system. I repeat this now and then. We have to have effective system that would build or that would increase the forest cover, as well as the multiple benefits local communities can get from trees and healthy functioning ecosystems. To be very specific, the existing legal provision is good, and the Gada system is good. We can merge the two and have a local level system where each and every farmer pay attention to having that kind of integrated and regenerative agricultural practices.
Thank you, Doctor. As you know, the impact of climate change is affecting especially most of African, East African countries, including Ethiopia. So what should be done? And what is expecting from leaders of these countries to overcome this problem?
Globally, climate change has been a top priority, top agenda for under discussion. Climate change is a crisis that has been causing loss of lives and the livelihoods in many countries, whether it is developed or developing country. For example, due to climate change, Australia has been banned. America has been banned. Okay, the forest fire has destroyed thousands of households, displaced millions. Due to climate change, hurricanes has devastated like many developed countries. And the same has happened to us. For example, in our case, the Borana drought, which has caused loss of thousands of livestock and loss of billions of Ethiopian birr, and also social crisis, economic crisis, and floods have been causing again another loss of lives and livelihoods in Ethiopia, in other developing countries, and in developed countries as well. So the thing is, to reverse this problem, we have to take practical actions. The first one is to mitigate that crisis. For mitigating climate change impact, the developed countries are responsible for the climate change crisis. So they have to take practical action in reducing this greenhouse gases emission to the atmosphere from different industries, from coal industries, from all oil and gas industries. That is one. And including Ethiopia, many developed countries have called for this, and the developed countries promise to take action, and we are monitoring that. It's work in progress. The other option in mitigating is to plant trees and increase vegetation cover so that this greenhouse gases, particularly carbon dioxide, can be sequestered and converted into useful forms. To do that, again, as Ethiopia, we have to increase our forest cover and reduce emission of greenhouse gases like gases from agricultural lands and also from livestock. The most important one for Ethiopia is, compared to other developed countries, we have low adaptive capacity. For example, when America is hit by California was banned, or Florida area was devastated by hurricane, America didn't ask for any support from any country because they have already built their adaptive capacity. We do not have that adaptive capacity. So what we have to do is, which is unavoidable, to build our adaptive capacity for drought, to build our adaptive capacity for floods, and also have our infrastructure that is nature-based. In nature-based means, for example, when we are working toward this preventing floods, we can use the grey infrastructure and the trees, the grasses together as a combined, and prevent the flood from causing any problem. For example, the initiative taken by the Prime Minister, starting from down to the city center, along the river banks, is one example of nature-based solutions. So working with nature and building our adaptive capacity is very important. It's similar everywhere. For example, when we are planning for increasing our agricultural productivity, the officials in Ministry of Agriculture and the local and regional Bureau of Agriculture should think of the options that would reduce the impact of climate change in terms of drought, as well as in terms of floods and others. So trees on farm and building, following the principles of nature-based solution for building adaptive capacity is critical. That is how I see. And the other one is we need to build our capacity in terms of early warning systems for predicting climate change, disasters, weather variabilities, and inform our local communities and the local officials governance system to take precautionary actions to minimize loss of lives and the livelihoods.
Natural resource conservation and environmental protection work needs active participation of private sector. So how do you rate the trend in Africa in general and in Ethiopia in particular?
The private sector engagement in all sectors is critical because government has limited capacity. Government has priorities. So if we want to succeed in our development, we need to empower and also put a legal system that would support the private sector and encourage them to engage in actions in different fronts. So that's my understanding. And having that, we have to put in place incentives that would increase and also encourage the private sector players to invest in the region and also in the country. The same trend is true everywhere, including in developed countries. So what I would suggest to our federal and the regional governments is to have diversified private sector engagement mechanism and have continuous engagement with them. It's not this private engagement. I mean, private sector engagement is not something you can do at once and forget. It has to be continuous engagement. It has to be there should be a mechanism for monitoring progresses and also closely working with them, because private sector work for profits. It's not for simply serving. So we need to support them to get the profit they need and also the safety and the security they need. Using this opportunity, I would like to comment on the need to have peaceful work environment for sustained development. If there are concerns, if there are issues, investors will not be encouraged to come and invest in any part of the world, including in Ethiopia, in Oromia. So their role is indispensable. We need them very, very badly. And so if we want to benefit from them, one, we have to create a conducive environment for them to operate. Two, we have to engage them and also work in agreement with the existing domestic legislation and the global responsibilities, because their investment should not affect the environment. The investment should not pollute the environment or the lives of communities, like in few investors where they pollute environment as well as health of the workers. So that legal system should be strong to put them on track. At the same time, they need support and safety, security to operate.
As you have tried to mention earlier, Ethiopia has come up with this Green Legacy initiative to ensure food security in a short period of time. What do you advise Ethiopia to do to succeed this national initiative?
This is basic question, and thank you for raising this. The Green Legacy initiative is excellent example that Ethiopia can and have been communicating to the global world. That is what it is, and we have to be all supportive of it and proud of the initiative being started by the Prime Minister. For me, I'm not sure, and so far I'm not convinced that this Green Legacy initiative is based on systematic approach. So my suggestion is to put in place a functional system that would ensure its sustainability. I highly appreciate the effort of the Prime Minister for the last 5 years, continuously working, actively participating in the process and giving leadership to that. I don't know a single provision and a systematic regulatory guideline that has been put in place to sustain this green legacy. All are operating in a campaign mode. Campaigns are good to create sensitization, awareness raising, but it should be built on system, and that systemic approach is lacking. And it has to be built in that context, and institutions running and responsible for this green legacy initiative needs to be strengthened and also aligned from federal to district level.
As you know, several international climate summits and conferences have been organized over the last 2 decades. Why has there no real impact made by the global community in practically stemming this global problem?
I have been participating in those global meetings under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and also the United Nations Convention on Biodiversity Conservation. Even I have been one of the negotiators for the Africa region. The thing is, developed countries are not ready to take responsibility for the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, particularly the climate crisis. They give promises and they are not meeting their promises. What they want is to keep the negotiation to continue in a way they get time or to buy time. So my assessment is there is no real commitment from the developed world. Similarly, developing countries, although they are not responsible for the global climate crisis, they are not playing their part though. I mean, if I'm complaining about the redressing, the loss and the damage, and also the mitigation adaptation, financial support, equally, any action I'm doing at home, at local level, whether it is small scale or large scale, should not be contrary to the global aspirations and the need to mitigate and adapt to climate change. So issues on both sides, and there is no genuine commitment, particularly from the developed world, to continue supporting developing countries to mitigate and adapt to the impact of climate change.
Doctor, thank you. Well, finally, if you have any message to add, you can do it.
Thank you very much. The last message I would like to add is natural resources are our everything. They are sources of food, water, and clean air. So I would like to appreciate what our Prime Minister has been doing through the Green Legacy Initiative. If we want to increase our ecosystem services, the ones I just mentioned, we need to pay special attention to the sustainable management of our natural resources, including forests, wetlands, and other ecosystems. And our development should be complementary with those sustainable development goals.
Dr. Gemedo Dalle, Associate Professor of Biodiversity and Vegetation Ecology of Center of Environmental Science at Addis Ababa University, thank you for your time and a deep insight on our program.
Thank you very much.
Dear viewers, that's all what we have for today. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.